You've heard about Dynasty Fantasy Football, but not sure if you're ready to make the leap. We'll break down the pros and cons about playing Dynasty rather than redraft and give you some league setup tips. All coming up next. I'm Eric Lee.
And I'm Jack Grant, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants. Welcome to the FFC Dynasty Fantasy Football Strategy Series. This is a one of three-part series. In the other parts, we're going to be talking about the drafting strategy and the waiver wire trades. So today is all about the pros and cons.
And Jack, I want to take this moment to welcome you as our newest fantasy football consultant, our resident Dynasty football expert.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Really happy to be on the show today.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Most fantasy football players play what's called redraft leagues, which means you pick a full roster every year, and then the next year you redraft an entire team. So help our viewers who aren't familiar, what is the difference between Dynasty Fantasy Football and redraft leagues?
Well, wow. First of all, I can't even imagine playing any other format. The redraft just kind of sounds boring to me, in my opinion, but essentially what a dynasty league is, it's like a keeper league on steroids. So normally in a keeper league, you might keep a few guys and there's some rollover from the year prior, but with a dynasty league, there's 15 guys and there's a lot of continuation from year to year. So
sell us on this. You know, what would you say is the number one pro advantage to doing playing dynasty?
I would say it feels genuinely like a real GM experience. You know, you're the Bill Belichick of your team and you're taking ownership in that. And there's longer time horizons as it relates to, you know, some of the decision making that everything's, you know, kind of happening at once. There's longer standing rivalries for one with your friends as it relates to, you know, performance or even trades that happen each year. I think honestly, you have a deeper connection with the players.
Yeah, I do. I can imagine that, right? I mean, like, give me an example. Who has been on your dynasty team for probably the longest period of time currently?
I would say Aaron Rodgers. Yeah.
Oh,
I got lucky. Yep. I've had him for a
okay,
while.
so you get it's almost a part of, you know, that's your persona of your team. You're the team that has Aaron Rodgers. When the redraft league, you know, it likely is going to roll over every year, different people that you have. Give me another. What else do you really like about?
Honestly, I think it's a bit more challenging. You know, instead of just like the short term, like I keep bringing it up, but you know, one season, one and done. Let's maximize points. You kind of have this idea of strategy, and there's many different kinds of strategies. You know, do I go in and get a bunch of rookies and, you know, go in for the long haul and see how it pans out? Or do I just go with based on, you know, the facts that we had last year and get a few surefire picks and maybe go for a Tom Brady? And I know I can depend on him as a starter half the weeks. The longevity is probably not there, although I think a lot of Patriots and Bucks fans would beg to disagree. But that's one thing I really like, that, you know, how challenging it is, the multiple strategies you can take. And frankly, there's no off season. So, you know, from the Super Bowl all the way to August, you can continue on making trades in the off season for draft.
Hold on a minute. Is that a positive or a negative? When you say there's no off season, I mean, the viewers out there are like, I need a break. I need an off season. I mean, how busy are you really in spending time on your dynasty fantasy football team from February to July?
I mean, we've all seen the league, right? And we've seen how Pete and Taco and some of those guys kind of go at it year in and year out. But from our standpoint, it really depends on what kind of guys you have in the league. Some people are a little bit more on top of, you know, their team and want to make trades and get better for the next season. And some are a little bit more hands off. So I definitely take a proactive approach and try to better myself before the draft, but it's not for everybody.
Well, give me hours. I mean, listen, I don't think about fantasy football for 5 or 6 months of the year in my redraft leagues. Are you worrying about your team in those months between the end of the Super Bowl and, draft day?
I mean, not necessarily an every single week, type thing. Definitely a few hours a month here and there, just texting friends or maybe doing research or,
What are you
especially when
texting
that
about? Are you
combines.
trading? What are you doing? Are you trading? Are you
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
trades and
yeah,
oh man.
exactly. Some trades, watching a lot of like the college, the combines, seeing what the draft's going to look like. That gets a lot of excitement come draft time.
How many teams are in your dynasty fantasy league?
There's 12. Yep,
Okay.
12 guys.
So here's the biggest concern that I have, and I think most of the viewers who are afraid to do this leap going from redraft to dynasty. They're worried that some of those 12 teams will drop out of the league, will have a bad year, and then, and just lose hope because they suck and they, how do you deal with that?
I see you've made your way to the cons pretty quickly.
Well, we got to give both sides here
I guess.
representing redrafts.
So that's definitely one of them. You definitely need to have a group of committed people, right? No one wants to inherit another person's team, because someone else dropped out or hasn't, stopped caring. And the other 11 teams want a more committed person. So that's definitely one of the big cons to doing the dynasty. I don't want to let that scare anyone. If you have a group of 12 really committed people, it's definitely worthwhile for some of the other reasons I mentioned. But, making a few bad decisions, trades, maybe in the draft, your first initial draft, there's a lot of weight that's put on that. That can set you back for multiple years. So that's definitely a turnoff to it. So it's really not for fair weather fans either, and people who aren't going to invest a little bit of time. So I think that's why we see, the mainstream leagues, everyone's just kind of going one and done. That's it, one season, and hopefully I can do it again next year.
How many roster spots that might carry over to the next year?
Yeah, so I mean, in our particular league, we do 15, and yeah, it's 15 keepers. Yeah, so that's the whole point of dynasty.
Yeah.
Usually do one quarterback, two wide receivers, two running backs, a tight end, a flex, the kicker, the defense, and then we actually have 7 bench spots. This is meant to, allow your rookies to progress, and make sure that you have sufficient space on the bench. And then last year, frankly, because of COVID, there was 4 injury reserve spots too. It just wasn't fair to be able to, have to discard folks for something like that, or being out for 1 week. So
in a normal year, which we all hope will be 2021, and COVID wouldn't be as big of an issue. Do you have IR spots at all, or just have less spots?
Yeah, we have so there's usually 2 IR spots. Just last year we bumped it up to 4. For instance, I had Jeremy Maclin a few years back when he tore his ACL. I think I picked him up, and everyone gave up on him for the season, but then he came back and performed up to standards the next year. So it's a perfect example of someone being damaged goods one season and maybe worth stashing on your IR. That's an option.
Like I've seen some dynasty leagues set up to last like 3 years or 5 years, and then see less longer. What if someone's going to set one up? How long do you think it should last?
Forever is better. I
Forever.
like
So your kid in your will,
Yep.
are you going to actually give that to your kids, your dynasty fantasy football team?
What's the point of, having bragging rights if eventually it's going to come to an end? I think forever is better. I like to see, the chess game kind of play out in the long run. And it's nice to have the faith that if you're going to be trading away draft capital, that it's going to mean something down the road, right? So like, what if you had a 5-year time horizon, then by the 5th year, no one's really trading their picks, right? Because they're like, oh, it's going to end next year. So it's definitely, you should at least anticipate indefiniteness.
Okay, let me ask you this, Jack. Let's assume that the viewers are convinced we're going to switch over to a dynasty league for the first time in 2021. How should they set that up? How many rounds should the draft be?
Yeah, about 15 to 20. It really depends on how many people you want on your bench and what's allowed for that particular league. But 15 to 20 is a good number.
All right. All right. Let's just say I'll go in the middle of that you pick 17, right? And at the end of 2021, and our viewers win the championship because they're going to win the championship because they're following us all year.
Hope you do.
So what's going to happen in 2022? Like if you have a 17-person roster, how many guys do you keep? Do you say that you're going to keep all of them? Is your roster just carry over to the next year?
Nope. So not every player carries over usually. Usually it's like we said before, it's a keeper league on steroids. So you get about, let's say 13 or 14 that you want to keep, and then you discard the other 4. And you do that by way of not selecting them prior to the draft.
Yeah. You call them into your fantasy office and let them know you appreciate their services, but they're getting old or whatever the case is. Okay. So, and in the
Seahawks, I don't.
Hey, I see that Viking thing down there. Week 3, my friend. Week 3, the Seahawks play the Vikings. We're going to talk a lot about that week. Anyways, so how about the second year then? You're going to obviously have to draft all the rookies for the next year and anyone who is available. Let me ask you this. How do you figure out the draft order? Is it like the NFL, which is the worst team drafts first?
So it's pretty much like that, but it's more in our particular keeper league. We do more of an NBA lottery where the last team has a higher chance of getting the first pick, but it's not guaranteed.
Oh, so no tanking to make it 100% that you're going to get the number 1
exactly.
pick.
So we usually get a group chat going, and we trust that the commissioner has done a good job with the amount of pinballs there. I don't know. I've never really been at the low end of the totem there. I usually only have like 1 ball on there. So
excuse us. Never been on the low end. All right. And is it like, normal redraft leagues is they call it a snake. It goes, but in real NFL, it's not a snake. It's whoever is the first in the first round is first in the second round, the third round. Is that how, Dynasty would work like the NFL does, or would it be a snake?
It would just be like real NFL. Yep. So they're just going to be, 1 through 12, and then, the number 1 goes again. Not a snake. That's usually how we like to do it.
I'm curious about how many rounds is your, in the year 2, when you've had it established, how many rounds do you normally have?
Year 2 is only going to be about, let's say 4 to 6 rounds. A lot of the premium is going to be put on the rookies. Sometimes you'll get like a Gronkowski, let's say, where he comes out of retirement and all of a sudden people want him. So, it's just the undrafted guys. Sometimes if you were to drop a guy and someone else thought highly of him, maybe they pick him up later on in the draft. But usually like those top 15 or 20 picks overall in the first 2 rounds, those are going to be all rookies that are highly recruited. And, the Edwards-Helaire and the Jefferson and, had to get a little Viking plug in there.
Okay. Anyway, well, sounds good. Well, Jack, this was really good because I think people got a real taste of what it's like. Now we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to talk all about strategy for how to be successful. So if you like what you're watching, please click the like button. And if you haven't yet, hit the red subscriber button. The next video is going to be me and Jack talking about how to dominate your draft in Dynasty. And then the third class takes you through the regular season and what type of trades and what type of waiver wire strategies do you have to improve your team as the season goes along. Until then, take care, and we'll see you next time.